Hey.
When it comes to the topic of Russell Westbrook in today's state of the NBA, I feel like all of the media discourse has to do with his fit on the Lakers, how the Lakers are going to play with him on the team, which lineups are going to be good with Westbrook, which are going to be bad with Westbrook. But the one thing that barely ever gets talked about is what's left of the Washington Wizards after trading away Russell Westbrook this past offseason. They got guys like Kuzma, KCP, Montrezl Harrell, some picks, if I remember correctly, in return. And it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me why there isn't more national media attention towards the Washington Wizards, because not only are they at the top of the Eastern Conference as of now, but they're doing it by just playing really solid team basketball. Everyone knows their roles and understands what they have to do to help the team win. And it's not even like they've been having easy wins. This Washington basketball team has been beating legitimately good squads. And I think the scariest thing about this hot start for the Wizards is that they're doing it while a lot of their best players aren't even playing to their best availabilities. For example, Bradley Beal was someone who we saw finish second in scoring in the entire NBA last season with over 30 a game. And so far throughout his first, however many games he's played, I know he's missed a few, but he's only averaging 23 points per game, which is a very noticeable drop-off. And I know that there's a lot of talk about scoring averages dropping because of the new foul rules, but in Bradley Beal's case, I think it's more so just that he's been a really inefficient shooter so far to open the season. When looking at his season-long stats, you see that he's just barely over 40% from the field, and he's at 25% on three-point shooting percentage on over 6 attempts a night. So, I mean, he's putting up plenty, he's just not making a lot. So again, it's just really weird that Bradley Beal, I feel like he's someone who very rarely has at least this long of a slump. He's normally a very, very good offensive basketball player, as we've seen in many years in the past. And I don't know about y'all, but if you were to read me off his stats that I just, said to you guys, and you had me guess what the Washington Wizards record was, it'd probably take me a while before I got to 9-3, and again, number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. So then you might be asking yourself, if it's not Bradley Beal, then how the hell are the Wizards 9-3? Like, who's showing up and playing and getting these dubs for them? And to answer that, again, I'll just say, everyone on the roster is just playing their role to perfection right now, and although some guys still have a higher level that I feel pretty comfortable saying that they could get to, everyone's just playing good basketball. For starters, I think one thing we have to talk about is the Montrezl Harrell MVP hype, because the whole situation's just really funny, because obviously anyone that watches basketball, even though the Wizards are off to a hot start, I think everyone understands that Montrezl Harrell isn't a legitimate MVP candidate. The only reason that there's even a discussion around it is because a lot of stat tracking sites have him just statistically as an MVP candidate based off of numbers only. And so again, through that lens, it makes sense why he's in the top 5, top 10, whatever he is. Because Montrezl Harrell has been really good in his role so far, especially these games while Daniel Gafford was out with injury for a little bit. But at the end of the day, this is exactly what Montrezl Harrell is. He's someone who's going to put up a lot of stats, he's going to get you rebounds, he's going to get you points, because he's just a really effective scorer and offensive weapon at the big man position. But I promise you guys, once games start to get important and teams are able to attack and game plan and focus on certain defenders, that's where Montrezl Harrell's weaknesses show, and I think we'll all be reminded of that again once the Washington Wizards actually play some high level important games. But for now, we can push the Montrezl Harrell MVP agenda just because, again, it's just kind of funny. And while we're on the topic of former Lakers, I gotta talk about Kyle Kuzma too. Because as much of a meme he has been throughout his career, between some of the interesting, like League Fits posts I see, or some of his tweets that he tweets out that just don't make a whole lot of sense. When it comes to strictly on-court evaluations, Kyle Kuzma isn't a terrible basketball player, as some may have been, persuaded to believe at some point in their lives. Not only is he averaging a career high in three-point percentage to open up this season, but if you look at the past 4 games that the Wizards have played, Kyle Kuzma is up to around 17 points per game, and he's shooting 48% from 3 on almost 8 attempts a night, which is just absolutely ridiculous for Kuz. But I think people might also be forgetting that in that first season when LeBron came to the LA Lakers and missed a whole bunch of games with whatever injury he had during that year, Kyle Kuzma very quietly averaged a little under 19 points a game, which in that year he was a second-year player, and again, that's just really, really encouraging. But then obviously LeBron came back and was healthy, Kuz got less minutes, less playing time on the court, and ultimately his numbers took a hit. So in hindsight, it makes sense that now that Kuz is on a roster that needed wings and needed guys who could score the ball from the wing position, and Kuz does just that. So now he's back getting more minutes, he's getting more shot attempts, therefore the numbers are going back up, and again, Kuz is just a solid NBA player who is just taking advantage of more opportunities now. And I guess to wrap up former Lakers, KCP, he's been a solid point of attack defender, hasn't been... he's shooting 34% from 3. Not terrible. You know, KCP's KCP. He's a solid rotational guy. Now another guy who deserves a lot of praise for being one of the leaders on this team, and another big reason why they're able to just get off to a really good start so far this year, is Spencer Dinwiddie. A lot of people forgot about Spencer Dinwiddie, obviously because he missed all of last season with the injury, but I think it's fair to say that if that weren't the case and the Nets had a healthy Spencer Dinwiddie on that roster, they are easily NBA champions because Dinwiddie's that good. And although he's been in a bit of a slump as of late, he's still been a very, very vital key piece to this Wizards team, because the backcourt with him and Bradley Beal, that can give any defensive backcourt just absolute nightmares, because you have obviously Bradley Beal, one of the best just per game scorers in the NBA that they've seen in recent years. But then you also add Spencer Dinwiddie, who's just super fluid with the ball in his hands, can maneuver pick and rolls super easily, gets to the rim with absolute ease as well, and just overall offers a whole lot of rim pressure. But then if you overplay to his driving lanes, then he'll easily just step back and drain some, off the handle threes. Overall, he's just a really good offensive player. And now that I mentioned the fact that their backcourt with Dinwiddie and Beal, it's a great offensive backcourt, not necessarily the best defensive backcourt, but that's again where the rest of the roster comes in and plays a key role. And that's because the rest of the roster is filled with just really solid defenders. We've already talked about KCP, we already talked about Kuz, who both are guys that I would consider to be above average on that end of the court. But then you have Raul Neto, who's just a solid defensive guard that you can bring in for either Dinwiddie or Beal and just run, lineups whatever you want based off of that. You've got Deni Avdija, who's in his second season now, and another guy who I feel like a lot of people just forgot about because he missed the rest of the previous season. It's like the second half or a good amount of games with another season-ending injury. But he's just been so amazing on the defensive side of the ball as a second-year guy. I know he got a lot of praise in a recent game against the Bucks where he was almost shutting down Giannis, which is something that is very, very rare to happen, without having to use double teams or triple teams or some sort of really convoluted defensive scheme. So overall, a lot of Wizards lineups just have a lot of length on the perimeter. Again, just to name them off, you've got Dinwiddie, Beal, Kuzma, KCP, Deni Avdija, all just with great wingspans that are able to just clog up offensive schemes. But in the case that opposing offenses actually do get to the rim, get into the paint, you have Daniel Gafford, who is an excellent rim protector, and then you have Montrezl Harrell, who isn't great defensively, but is over a block a game right now, which, Trez, again, isn't a great defender, but he's very, very much willing to challenge any shot that he can get to at the rim. And so far, it's all working out great. Again, they're just doing awesome. And to end this video about Washington, I was going to bring up one more stat talking about their defense because it's just been kind of an interesting thing to notice. But defensively, the Wizards are allowing the least amount of three-pointers made per game at 9.3. They're third in three-point attempts allowed, and they're also first in opponent three-point shooting percentage. And this is interesting for two reasons. On one hand, it fits perfectly what this defensive scheme seems to want to do, as I've previously been talking about. Beal and Dinwiddie aren't the best defenders, so it makes sense that guys are going to be getting to the rim or just be shooting twos, but they also seem to just making a huge effort at running guys off the three-point line, and so far, it seems to have been working, at least based off the numbers. But then you could also look at it from the angle that, yes, they're doing a great job of not allowing a lot of three-point opportunities, but you could also look to the fact that teams are shooting under 30% from three, which I'm just not quite sure if that's going to be a number that can hold up for a full 82 game season. So while it's great that they're containing the three-point shot and not letting teams get off as many threes as they want, there is a chance that there's some negative regression at some point where teams start hitting threes, and that's when the Wizards can maybe find themselves in a little bit of trouble. But for now, everything's going smoothly. Bradley Beal still has plenty of tiers to go up. The rest of the roster is playing great. Rui Hachimura hasn't even played a single second on the court yet. I hope everything's all good with him because his situation is just kind of weird right now. But at the end of the day, I think it's pretty clear to say the Washington Wizards do not miss Russell Westbrook one bit. And if you've made it to this point in the video, then congratulations, you're a real one. Now, if you enjoyed this video, maybe think about hitting the subscribe button. It should be somewhere in this general direction. Or if you're not sure yet, maybe check out another video which should be in this general direction. Either way, thank you for watching.